They say that time has a way of reshaping people, of changing their hearts, their priorities, and the way they see the world. But some things are stubborn, resistant to the inevitable march of years. Pride, for instance, has a peculiar way of lingering far longer than youth ever could. It nestles quietly in the corners of the soul, unseen but ever present, waiting for moments to assert its presence. My granddaughter, once a bright-eyed little girl who could barely contain her excitement, had adored every single dress I had painstakingly sewn for her. Tiny ribbons curled delicately around her wrists and ankles, lace like gossamer clouds hugging the soft curves of her small frame, and fabric stitched with a patience and love so deep it almost felt alive. I had watched her twirl endlessly in sunlight, the rays catching the shimmer of the thread, her laughter ringing like bells across our home. Each giggle, each spin, was a testament to the joy we shared, and every time I saw her beam, I felt my heart swell so fully I feared it might burst from my chest. Yet, as years passed and innocence gave way to adolescence, that admiration slowly waned. The sparkle in her eyes dimmed when she looked at me, curiosity fading into indifference, fascination replaced by the casual disregard of youth. One unremarkable afternoon, her gaze landed on me, sharp and quick, and before I could speak, she let out a laugh, cruel, unthinking, and harsh, the kind of sound that cuts through a room and leaves behind an echo that refuses to fade. "Outdated," she said, her voice slicing the air. "Embarrassing." Words that should never pass from the lips of a child to someone who had devoted decades of care and love, words that hit like icy needles against the heart. I felt the sting, a slow ache threading through my chest, yet I smiled, not out of happiness, but out of a quiet, resolute dignity. I said nothing, hiding my sorrow behind calm composure, because I knew something she did not. Respect, even if forgotten for a time, has a way of returning. And it always returns when it is most needed, often catching the world unprepared, reminding it of truths it had long ignored. The world, after all, has a way of forgetting those who built its foundations, those whose efforts and sacrifices remain invisible until they choose to make themselves known. And that reminder, that quiet, undeniable reckoning, came not in whispers, but beneath lights brighter than the midday sun, in a grand room filled with countless eyes, all of them witnesses to the moment when reality could no longer be denied. But before we step into that moment, make sure you are subscribed to the Old Folks channel. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We delight in seeing how far these stories of pride, love, and quiet redemption can travel, touching hearts across cities, countries, and generations alike. The room was alive with the cheerful chaos of a birthday celebration. Bright balloons floated lazily near the ceiling, their reflections bouncing off the polished wooden floor, mingling with the warm, golden sunlight streaming through the tall windows. The faint hum of a familiar birthday song lingered in the background, soft and melodic, as children's laughter rippled through the air like tinkling bells. I stood quietly in a corner, clutching a delicate glass of tea, my dress carefully pressed and neatly arranged, its soft colors muted but elegant under the morning sun. She approached, her eyes flicking over me with that curious, mischievous gleam I remembered from years ago, the one that once made my heart swell with pride. But now, before I could react, her lips curved into a sharp, sudden laugh, cruel, bright, and cutting, and she exclaimed, "Grandma, that dress, it's so old-fashioned." Her words hung like smoke in the air, curling around my chest, lapping tightly around my heart as if squeezing it slowly, invisibly, leaving a chill I couldn't shake. The music continued, the laughter carried on, yet a strange quiet fell over me. The room seemed to narrow, the light dimmed slightly, and the sounds blurred into a distant echo, leaving only the sharpness of her words echoing in my mind. I forced a polite smile, but a cold, unwelcome ache slid down my spine. I wondered, with a sinking heaviness, did she truly mean it, or was it merely a careless, passing joke, cruel in its timing but fleeting in intention? I felt the subtle tremble of my hands as I smoothed the hem of my dress, as if the motion could steady the storm inside me. The fabric felt unusually heavy, weighted not by material, but by the invisible threads of memory stitched into every seam, decades of love, patience, and care interwoven into each fold and crease. Each stitch I had sewn with my own hands seemed suddenly delicate, fragile, almost vulnerable in the face of her dismissive glance. My gaze wandered to a photograph on a nearby table, her as a tiny child, twirling joyfully in a dress I had made, ribbons bouncing, lace fluttering like soft wings, her laughter captured forever in a frozen moment of innocence. A pang of sorrow pressed against my chest, slow and insistent. I longed to speak, to whisper the story behind each stitch, the hours spent bending over the fabric, the tender moments we had shared, but no words emerged. I forced my lips into a smile, soft and composed, while inside, my heart throbbed with a heavy, almost unbearable ache. Somewhere deep within, I felt a cold, unfamiliar fear. Had she, in that fleeting second, truly seen me as ordinary, invisible, unremarkable? Would she ever come to understand the quiet, lifelong labor of love I had poured into her happiness, now reduced to a fleeting, careless word? She twirled and laughed among her friends, oblivious to the silent storm brewing behind my calm, composed exterior. Each burst of her laughter was like a sharp gust of wind stirring dust in an empty room, stirring memories, stirring pain. I told myself that leaving early would be an act of self-preservation, a way to shield the pride that still clung to me like a second skin, delicate but resilient. The soft click of my shoes against the polished wooden floor echoed through the near-empty corners as I made my way toward the door, each step deliberate, measured, carrying a quiet dignity that felt both defiant and fragile. The air outside was cool, brushing against my cheeks like a whisper, awakening a resolve I hadn't known I possessed. My mind kept replaying her words, the cruel echo bouncing in my head, impossible to silence. I paused for a moment, glancing back at the party, the balloons, the laughter, the bright sunlight, and the vibrant chaos blurring into a hazy, dreamlike haze. My vision softened as if the world itself had dimmed, and I wondered quietly, with a shiver that traveled down to my bones, would she remember this fleeting moment, or would it drift away like smoke on a gentle breeze, leaving nothing behind but an invisible scar? The house was quiet now, the laughter of the party still echoing faintly in my mind. I moved toward the small wooden cabinet where my old sewing machine rested, its surface scratched and worn from decades of use. As my fingers traced the familiar curves of its frame, memories unfolded like a silent film in the corners of my mind. I remembered the tiny dresses I had made for her as a child, soft pastels, delicate lace, and ribbons that seemed to dance with every twirl she took. Each stitch had been a promise, a whisper of care, a small, silent message of love. I could almost hear the gentle whir of the sewing machine, the rhythm of the needle stitching through fabric as if keeping time with my heartbeats. Her laughter, tiny and pure, echoed through these memories, bouncing off the walls of my mind like fragile glass. Each outfit I had sewn carried more than just fabric. It carried years of whispered stories, bedtime tales, and long afternoons spent together in quiet harmony. And now, standing alone, I felt a bittersweet ache, knowing that those same hands that had once celebrated every stitch now dismissed the love behind them. Had she ever truly understood what went into these creations, or had it all been invisible to her growing eyes? I held the fabric of my old dress in my hands, its texture roughened slightly by age, yet still soft enough to bring a familiar comfort. Each thread seemed alive, carrying the weight of decades, the quiet nights spent bent over it, the moments of reflection as I stitched tiny hearts, flowers, and patterns into the cloth. The very air seemed to hum with the memories of past celebrations, birthdays, school recitals, first day of school uniforms, every important milestone stitched into its seams. I could feel the pulse of those years vibrating through the fibers, a silent testament to the life we had shared. The room around me was still, yet every shadow seemed to whisper reminders of the past, fleeting shapes of tiny hands reaching for ribbons, the soft patter of little feet across wooden floors, the warm glow of sunlight falling through windows onto fabric that held our story. A pang of sorrow wrapped around my chest, heavy and insistent. I wanted to speak, to tell her that each thread was threaded with memories, with care, with love she might never understand. But the words lodged in my throat, trapped by years of silent devotion. Would she ever see beyond the surface and understand the depth of what I had given her? My gaze fell on an old photograph propped against the sewing machine. There she was, a little girl with round cheeks and sparkling eyes, caught mid-spin in one of the very dresses I had made. The ribbons fluttered in the captured motion, lace delicate as morning mist, and her laughter seemed to leap out from the paper and into the quiet room. I traced her outline with my finger, feeling both warmth and an unexpected sting of sorrow. Time had moved so quickly. The little girl in the photograph had grown into a young woman, and in that transformation, something essential had been lost, or perhaps forgotten. I sank into a chair beside the machine, holding the photograph close. Shadows from the fading daylight stretched across the room, the edges of the photograph glowing like a portal to a world that no longer existed. Memories and regrets mingled, a bittersweet symphony of love and unspoken sorrow. I wondered if she remembered the afternoons spent sitting beside me, learning patience and care, or if those moments had simply dissolved into forgotten fragments of her childhood. Could she ever understand that the woman she laughed at had shaped so much of who she was, and might still hold the power to remind her of it? Days passed after the birthday, the sting of her words lingering like a dull shadow across my heart. Then, one quiet morning, a delicate envelope appeared at my doorstep, its paper thin and elegant, the handwriting familiar yet formal. I held it in my hands, feeling the weight of possibility tremble beneath my fingertips. Inside was an invitation, her very first fashion show, a celebration of her creativity and ambition, set to unfold beneath dazzling lights in a hall brimming with spectators. My pulse quickened, a mixture of surprise, apprehension, and something else I could not name. The envelope seemed to hum of quiet expectation, a silent challenge I could not ignore. I thought of her laughter, sharp and dismissive, echoing in my ears, and the memories of the dresses I had made her as a child surged through me. The contrast between her scorn and the opportunity presented in this letter made my chest tighten. Could I go? Should I even consider entering a world where she might still see me as old-fashioned, irrelevant, or unworthy? Or could this be my moment, a quiet, unspoken chance to remind her of the depth of love, skill, and patience that had shaped her life from the beginning? Was I ready to step into the spotlight, even if it meant confronting her pride and my own vulnerability? For hours, I sat by the window, the invitation resting on my lap, staring at it as though it contained the answers to questions I had long avoided. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying the distant sounds of children playing and leaves rustling like soft applause. My mind wandered through memories, replaying the laughter, the cruel remark, the sting of being unseen. Every instinct urged caution, telling me to remain in the shadows, to let pride retreat and avoid humiliation. Yet, beneath the hesitation, a quiet determination began to bloom. I remembered the countless hours spent threading needles, the careful folds of fabric, the love imbued in every stitch. I recalled her childhood eyes lighting up with wonder at every dress, every ribbon, every tiny detail I had crafted for her. Could I let those memories fade without standing up for them? The thought of leaving silently, letting her think she had diminished me, gnawed at my chest like a persistent ache. Was this the moment to reclaim the respect that had slipped away, or would I be walking into another scene of heartbreak? As twilight descended, casting long, muted shadows across the room, I finally made my decision. I would go, but not as the grandmother she had belittled. I would attend with the quiet competence of someone who knew her worth, someone whose years of experience, patience, and love could not be diminished by careless words. I smoothed my hands over the fabric of my old dress, imagining how it could be transformed, how it could carry the weight of memory and pride without needing to shout or demand recognition. A faint smile touched my lips, fragile yet resolute. The world outside seemed to hold its breath, the wind whispering secrets through the open window as if it knew the silent courage gathering in my chest. I would step into her world, yes, but on my own terms, graceful, unyielding, and dignified. Every memory, every stitch, every quiet sacrifice would guide me, and I knew that once I walked through those doors, nothing would ever feel the same again. Was she prepared for the woman who had quietly shaped her life to finally appear, fully present, beneath the lights? The house had slipped into an almost sacred stillness, a silence so deep that every small sound seemed magnified, the faint, persistent ticking of an old clock, the subtle creak of the floorboards as the house shifted with its own quiet breath, even the distant rustle of leaves brushing against the windows. Outside, the night sky stretched infinitely, a vast, inky canvas pierced by countless pale stars, cold and indifferent, yet somehow beautiful, reminding me of the passage of time. I carried the dress into my small sewing room, cradling it gently as though it were a fragile, living thing. Its faded fabric bore the weight of memories, moments of joy and sorrow, unspoken words, and silent care, each fold heavy with the stories of decades. The lamplight flickered, sending soft, golden halos dancing across the wooden table, illuminating spools of thread, scattered needles, and fabric scraps like tiny treasures waiting to be awakened. Every corner of the room seemed to whisper echoes of the past, her laughter from birthdays long ago, the scent of warm tea and biscuits that had filled countless afternoons, the gentle brush of her tiny hands as she had helped fold the fabric with curiosity and delight. Sitting down, I exhaled slowly, feeling the tension in my shoulders begin to dissolve. The room felt suspended in time, a small sanctuary cocooned away from the world outside, where memories were alive, and the past lingered in the quiet shadows. With every careful fold, every gentle adjustment of the fabric, I realized I was doing more than sewing. I was weaving together years of love, pride, patience, and endurance. My fingers traced the old seams with deliberate care, each thread a silent echo of stories that no one else could see. The question lingered in my mind, quiet but insistent: would this dress, infused with decades of memory and devotion, carry the power to speak to her heart and awaken the respect she had once lost? Part 2: The Needle, Thread, and Memories Flowing. I picked up the needle and threaded it carefully, the thread slipping through its tiny eye with a soft hiss, like the whisper of a secret in the stillness of the night. Every stitch was deliberate, precise, a slow meditation in motion, each pass through the fabric calling forth memories that flowed like a gentle but unstoppable tide. I could see her small hands reaching for ribbons, hear the distant echo of clapping at birthdays and school plays, remember the warmth of long afternoons spent side by side, folding, measuring, stitching, and sharing stories in quiet harmony. The hum of the sewing machine blended with the soft murmur of the wind brushing against the windows, creating a rhythm that felt as natural as the heartbeat of the house itself. Time seemed to dissolve, minutes melted into hours as the once simple dress gradually transformed under my hands. Its contours became elegant, its textures richer, its colors subtly glowing in the lamplight, soft but striking. Every fold, every stitch, carried silent pride and quiet rebellion, a defiance against the careless, dismissive words that had cut so deeply. Shadows stretched long across the walls like skeletal fingers reaching for me, yet inside, a quiet, steady resolve burned brighter than any doubt. Could this dress, now alive with memory, care, and patience, finally speak the truths I could not put into words? Could it show her what love truly looks like, sewn one stitch at a time? Part 3: The Dress Glows Under Lamplight. At last, I set the needle down, feeling the thrum of anticipation in my chest, and stepped back to let the lamplight fully illuminate the transformation. The dress shimmered quietly, modest yet arresting, radiating an understated elegance that demanded attention without begging for it. Each stitch was a testament to decades of devotion, each fold a subtle whisper of love and care woven into its fabric. It almost seemed alive, carrying with it the echoes of her laughter, the warmth of quiet nights spent laboring over every detail, and the invisible thread of a lifetime of memories stitched carefully into every seam. The air in the room felt electric, as if it held its breath in anticipation, waiting for the moment when the world, and she, would see it for what it truly was. I ran my fingers gently over the surface, feeling the subtle vibrations of memory pulsing beneath the fabric, the quiet power of creation thrumming with each thread. A sense of calm courage settled into my chest, mingled with excitement and a whisper of fear. Tonight, this dress would step into the world and speak a language older and stronger than words, a message of love, devotion, and silent perseverance that she could no longer ignore. The shadows danced across the walls, flickering as though rehearsing the story they were about to witness. Would she recognize the effort, the love, and the legacy stitched into every inch, or would it leave her awestruck and speechless, finally understanding what she had once dismissed? The grand hall throbbed with energy, alive with anticipation that seemed to pulse through the polished floors and bounce off the glittering chandeliers above. A sea of eager faces surrounded the runway, their eyes glimmering with expectation, while flashing cameras punctuated the air with bursts of brilliant light. Golden reflections from the hanging lights scattered across the hall, dancing on the gleaming surfaces and casting shifting patterns across the crowd like shards of starlight. Models appeared on the runway one by one, striding with precision, their posture perfect, their expressions poised, a blend of arrogance, confidence, and the cold discipline of practiced performance. Each step was a statement, sharp and deliberate, while the music thundered, heavy, pulsating, demanding attention, shaking the walls and vibrating through the soles of my shoes. I lingered at the back, unnoticed amidst the pomp and spectacle, a quiet figure in the corner while the world celebrated style and perfection. The scent of perfume, the delicate rustle of fabrics, and the electricity of anticipation hung thick in the air, making every breath feel heavy with expectation. Every passing model seemed hollow, a shadow of true artistry, lacking the heartbeat that only decades of care, patience, and love could imbue into a creation. Anxiety tugged subtly at my chest, a quiet, insistent flutter, yet beneath it lay a solid, unshakable thread of resolve. Would anyone here recognize the power of a dress stitched not for show, but for love, for a lifetime of devotion and memory? The models glided past in a hypnotic procession, one after another, their movements flawless but mechanical, almost inhuman. Each dress shimmered under the harsh, blinding lights, sparkling threads and sequins designed to dazzle the audience and demand applause. Yet to me, every garment felt empty, lacking the pulse of life, the subtle rhythm of care that only hands guided by patience and heart could create. The crowd murmured approval, cameras clicked in rapid succession, and polite applause swelled through the hall, yet it felt hollow, a superficial echo of admiration for appearances without essence. I remained in the shadows, a silent witness, feeling the invisible weight of memory pressing against the present moment. Each step along the runway reminded me that beauty could be crafted by hands, machines, and fleeting trends, but respect, love, and legacy could not. They required dedication that spanned years, stitched quietly and patiently into the fibers of existence. My heartbeat synced with the driving music, slow and deliberate at first, then quickening, a subtle drum echoing in the quiet corridors of my mind. Would she, and the audience, recognize the difference when the true creation appeared, the dress alive with decades of devotion, memory, and silent storytelling? The music escalated, rising in volume and intensity, as the lights flickered across the runway in rapid, dazzling bursts. The audience leaned forward in their seats, eyes wide, ears straining, awaiting the next spectacle, the next model, the next carefully staged performance. I drew a slow, steadying breath, letting the charged atmosphere wash over me without disturbing the calm fire building inside. Shadows danced across the polished floor like fleeting specters, fleeting and hypnotic, mirroring the racing thoughts in my mind. My hand smoothed over the dress hidden beneath my coat, feeling the quiet strength of each fold, every stitch, every memory embedded in the fabric. For a heartbeat, time itself seemed suspended. The applause for the previous model faded into a soft, distant hum. The cameras clicked in frozen bursts, their flashes like frozen stars, capturing moments that would soon seem insignificant compared to what was coming. The audience leaned forward unknowingly, unaware of the true spectacle poised to appear. Somewhere in my mind, her laughter echoed, sharp, dismissive, lingering, the memory of her scorn pressing against my chest. The moment of reckoning drew closer, poised delicately on the edge between anticipation and revelation. Would the world feel the weight of what I had carried all these years when I stepped forward, or would their disbelief eclipse the truth of what love, patience, and decades of dedication could create? The lights above the runway wavered unexpectedly, a sudden stutter of illumination that cast the grand hall into a brief, trembling darkness. The once vibrant energy of the room faltered, replaced by a tense, electric pause. A collective murmur rippled through the audience, a mixture of surprise, uncertainty, and curiosity that rose like a wave, brushing against the polished floors and echoing softly off the towering walls. Shadows, elongated and distorted, flickered across faces, turning familiar features into ghostly, almost unrecognizable silhouettes. The music, which had thundered moments ago, faded into a distant echo, replaced by the subtle hum of expectation, vibrating in the air like a living thing. Every heartbeat in the room seemed amplified, mine included, as the audience unconsciously leaned forward, caught between anticipation and confusion. Models froze mid-step, their carefully rehearsed expressions faltering for a moment, eyes darting in search of the cause. The cameras continued flashing, capturing the fractured, surreal moment in jagged bursts of light, each click highlighting the tension suspended in the hall. I remained in the shadows, the dress hidden beneath my coat pressing softly against my chest, and felt a thrill surge beneath my calm exterior. This was no ordinary pause, it was a crack in the polished illusion, a fleeting opportunity. Could this fragile, fleeting moment be the perfect opening for the revelation I had prepared so long for? A voice suddenly rang out, clear and authoritative, cutting sharply through the murmur of speculation. "Ladies and gentlemen," the host's tone commanded attention, "we have a special surprise for tonight's show, a guest who will remind us all that true elegance is timeless." The words seemed to hang in the air, palpable, electric, causing the audience to collectively lean forward, curiosity and expectation coiling tightly within every spine. Cameras swiveled, flashes igniting with frantic precision, capturing angles no one could anticipate, immortalizing the moment just before revelation. The air itself felt suspended, charged with anticipation, as if the room collectively sensed the weight of what was about to occur. Inside me, each syllable reverberated like a drum, stirring a mixture of exhilaration, nervousness, and quiet pride. My shoulders straightened, a warm heat rising to my chest, an unspoken command to step forward and claim the moment. Whispers buzzed around the hall, speculation flitting from person to person like restless insects, their curiosity ignited yet unaware of the true story about to unfold. Deep inside, I sensed the dress respond almost consciously, as if it recognized the moment it had been waiting for, its fabric pulsing with the memories, patience, and love woven into every fold. Would the world see beyond the spectacle, beyond the fleeting glitter of fashion, to the quiet, timeless truth stitched into every thread? I took my first step toward the runway, each movement deliberate, measured, echoing softly across the polished floor like the steady tick of a clock counting down to destiny. The music, which had dominated the room moments ago, faded into a low, rhythmic hum, and the whispers of the crowd dimmed until a profound, almost tangible silence filled the hall. Every eye, unaware of what was about to unfold, turned instinctively toward the center, sensing that something extraordinary was about to occur. The dress, hidden for so long, now pressed softly against my body, carrying with it decades of quiet devotion, patience, and love, every stitch a testament to care, every fold a silent story whispered through the fabric. The lights above seemed to bend slightly, converging upon me, illuminating the contours, textures, and understated elegance that no machine or fleeting trend could ever replicate. Gasps of astonishment rippled through the audience like sudden waves, some audible, some swallowed by the magnitude of collective shock. Cameras clicked in rapid bursts, their flashes freezing fragments of time, capturing reactions that would live in memory long after the night ended. And then, her eyes met mine, my granddaughter's, wide with disbelief, awe, and the first stirrings of understanding. Recognition struck her like a lightning bolt, sudden, bright, and undeniable. For the first time, she truly saw, not merely a dress, but the decades of love, care, and artistry stitched into its every fiber. Would she finally comprehend what words could never convey, or would this breathtaking revelation slip by like mist, leaving only a shadow of its truth? The audience sat frozen, a tense hush blanketing the grand hall as I stepped fully onto the runway. The bright lights above seemed to bow down, bathing the dress in a halo of golden luminescence that made each stitch, fold, and ribbon glimmer like it had a heartbeat of its own. Every flash from the cameras carved sharp, fleeting streaks across the room, capturing astonishment in frozen frames. The music faded almost entirely, replaced by the subtle murmur of disbelief, as every pair of eyes turned to take in the unexpected vision before them. The dress, painstakingly reconstructed and imbued with decades of love and memory, seemed to breathe under the lights, radiating quiet elegance that contrasted sharply with the hollow, mechanical beauty that had paraded before it. I moved slowly, deliberately, letting every step echo softly against the polished floor, my presence commanding the room without a word. Gasps broke out, rippling through the audience like a wave of sudden awe, as if the air itself recognized the quiet power emanating from the fabric. Could they truly understand what it represented, every sleepless night, every tender stitch, every memory woven into its very fibers? I saw her then, my granddaughter, frozen mid-step, her eyes widening in disbelief, a mixture of astonishment, guilt, and awe flickering across her face. The laughter that had once sliced through my heart seemed to vanish entirely, replaced by a stunned silence that spoke louder than any apology could. Every movement I made highlighted the dress's timeless beauty, the understated grace born from love and patience rather than fleeting trends. The hall, so accustomed to spectacle, was now witnessing authenticity in motion, the quiet yet undeniable elegance of something created with a lifetime of devotion. Her gaze lingered, searching, questioning, as if she were seeing me, and not just the dress, for the first time in years. The subtle glow of the fabric reflected in her eyes, revealing a dawning comprehension, a recognition of the care and artistry she had once mocked. Cameras flashed in frenzied bursts, but nothing could capture the deeper revelation unfolding in that moment, the acknowledgement that beauty and respect are crafted, not purchased, and that some things, stitched with love and patience, transcend time itself. Would she finally understand the depth of what had been done for her, the legacy woven into each thread, each seam, each fold? The gasps and murmurs of the audience swelled, transforming into a reverent hush punctuated by scattered applause, hesitant at first, then growing louder as realization swept through the crowd. Flashbulbs popped relentlessly, but even the cameras seemed humbled by the quiet authority radiating from the dress, as if recognizing that no lens could capture its full story. People leaned forward in their seats, eyes wide, mouths slightly open, caught between admiration for the elegance before them and the unspoken understanding that this moment transcended fashion. The models who had walked before now seemed like shadows compared to the presence I carried, a testament to true craftsmanship, timeless devotion, and the quiet power of experience. I continued along the runway, each step deliberate, each motion a wordless declaration of what it meant to honor love, patience, and family. The air was thick with awe, the atmosphere charged, as though the very walls were acknowledging the undeniable truth that had entered the room. My granddaughter's hands trembled slightly as she reached toward me, eyes glistening, the sting of earlier words giving way to silent recognition. Could a single moment on this stage finally convey all the years of love, patience, and dedication that had gone unnoticed until now? Backstage, the atmosphere was heavy, dense with the mingling scents of perfume, fabric softener, hairspray, and polished wood. The chaos of the runway, the pounding music, the flashing cameras, the murmurs of the audience, felt miles away, replaced by a hushed, almost sacred quiet. Shadows stretched across walls cluttered with racks of dresses, mannequins, and dangling lights, casting eerie, shifting patterns that danced like restless spirits in the corners of the room. I moved cautiously, each step deliberate, my shoes making soft, echoing clicks on the polished floor, reverberating like a countdown to an impending reckoning. She followed me at a hesitant pace, her head slightly lowered, eyes flickering nervously between me and the layers of fabric around us. I could see the hesitation etched into her movements, a mixture of guilt, awe, and the lingering sharpness of disbelief that had dominated the earlier moments. The silence was almost overwhelming, heavy with unspoken tension, as if the very walls of the room were holding their breath in anticipation of what was about to unfold. My heart beat steadily, though a tremor of anxious anticipation ran through my chest. I could almost feel the history of every stitch in the dress pulling at me, reminding me of the countless hours spent perfecting it, sewing love and memory into its seams. I watched her, hesitant yet compelled, inch closer, and I could see that the mask of teenage arrogance was slipping away, revealing a raw vulnerability I had never allowed myself to see before. The air between us seemed electric, charged with emotion and the weight of unspoken words, stretching taut as a bowstring. Would she finally see the depth of my life's work, the years of devotion, and the love embedded in every fold of fabric? Or would this moment drift past, fleeting and misunderstood? Her hand trembled as it reached toward me, hesitant and unsure, as if approaching something sacred. Her voice, when it came, was a soft whisper, barely audible over the faint hum of the backstage activity. "Grandma, I didn't understand. I was wrong," she stammered, her eyes wide and glistening. What you've done, it's incredible." The words faltered and fractured in the tension of the moment, but I could feel their sincerity, raw and unfiltered, cutting through years of pride and silence. Tears welled in her eyes, threatening to spill, reflections of regret mingling with newfound admiration. I listened silently, letting her apology wash over me, each word unraveling years of hurt, pride, and misunderstanding that had quietly festered between us. The dress, now fully visible under the soft backstage lights, seemed to pulse with recognition, as if it understood the weight of the moment and the significance of the acknowledgement being offered. Her fingers lightly brushed the fabric, tracing the folds and seams with a reverence that mirrored her dawning comprehension. I could sense the magnitude of her realization that this dress was more than cloth. It was decades of care, patience, and love distilled into a tangible, living memory. She faltered, swallowing hard, trying to steady herself as another tear slid down her cheek. "I didn't mean what I said," she whispered, voice trembling. "I didn't see. I didn't understand the hours, the love, everything you put into all of this." Her words hung in the air like fragile glass, shimmering with emotion and vulnerability, waiting to be fully received and absorbed. I could see her pride crumbling, replaced by the first genuine humility and awe she had shown me in years. Could she finally grasp the full depth of what this dress represented, the silent work, the patience, the unwavering love that had gone into it? I reached out slowly, placing my hand over hers, feeling the warmth, tremor, and fragility of her gesture. My voice, quiet but steady, carried the weight of decades and the lessons of life. "You can't buy what's made from love," I said softly, each word deliberate, heavy with meaning. "Not time, not patience, not care, and certainly not respect. Some things cannot be purchased. They grow in moments like this, when they are earned, not demanded." The words hung in the air like a sacred proclamation, filling the backstage with an almost palpable reverence. Her lips quivered as tears continued to fall, tracing bright trails down her cheeks. Her hands lingered over the fabric, as though trying to absorb every memory stitched into its folds, every painstaking hour embedded in its seams. I could feel the history of the dress, the little hands that had helped me fold fabric, the quiet afternoons of laughter and storytelling, the unspoken love poured into every stitch, radiating from it like a living heartbeat. Slowly, she looked up, eyes meeting mine, and I saw comprehension dawning, fragile but real. For the first time, she understood not just the dress, but the devotion, patience, and enduring love that it represented. The distant hum of backstage activity faded into insignificance, replaced by the intimate silence between us. The chaos of the world outside seemed paused, the noise of applause from the hall far away, irrelevant to the monumental shift occurring here. In that moment, I realized that this confrontation, these apologies, and her tears were not just about a dress. They were about years of love, pride, misunderstanding, and the quiet power of legacy. Could this moment finally bridge the distance that had grown between us, replacing resentment with reverence, and scorn with understanding? Could a single act of recognition heal decades of unspoken pride? The hall was a kaleidoscope of lights, polished floors, and eager faces, but the energy had shifted, transforming from superficial excitement to something far heavier, almost sacred. The audience leaned forward, not just curious but spellbound, sensing that this was no ordinary runway moment. I stepped toward the center, extending my hand gently toward my granddaughter. Her fingers hovered for a heartbeat, trembling with hesitation, uncertainty, and the echoes of her earlier scorn. And then, slowly, she intertwined her hand with mine, a fragile yet unmistakable connection bridging a chasm that had silently grown over years of pride, misunderstanding, and distance. Every step we took together resonated with silent communication, a conversation deeper than words, spoken through touch, gaze, and posture. The dress swayed softly with each movement, reflecting the overhead lights like liquid gold, every fold, seam, and stitch imbued with decades of love and painstaking effort. The audience noticed, their eyes widening in surprise, admiration, and wonder, as if recognizing something intangible yet undeniable. I could feel my heartbeat steady, then quicken, in rhythm with hers, as if our shared steps had created a pulse that carried across the hall. Could a single touch, a single glance, finally convey what years of words had failed to express? I saw the subtle shift in her expression, the faint softening around her eyes, the quivering of her lips, the dawning realization that what she had once dismissed as old-fashioned carried the quiet power of love, devotion, and legacy. The hall seemed to contract around us, isolating our shared moment from the glitter, the spectacle, and the flashing cameras. Time slowed, each heartbeat magnified, each breath weighted with memory and anticipation. The connection we shared felt like the culmination of decades, every stitch, every shared afternoon, every whispered story now resonating in a single, perfect instant. The first murmurs of recognition began in the audience like the ripple of water across a still pond, soft, hesitant, and curious. Eyes widened as realization spread. This was not just another display of style or fleeting glamour, but something far deeper, a story woven into fabric, into movement, into the very air of the hall. The applause began slowly, tentative at first, like cautious acknowledgement, but then it swelled, building momentum as the audience absorbed the weight of the moment. They were witnessing legacy, patience, and love manifest in a single, tangible form, and the reverence was palpable. The cameras clicked, flashes illuminated the room, yet even the lenses could not capture the invisible threads of memory, devotion, and care sewn into every fold of the dress. Every glance from the audience carried admiration not just for the elegance of the fabric, but for the story, the history, and the quiet artistry that it represented. My granddaughter squeezed my hand gently, her eyes shimmering, reflecting both awe and remorse, and I felt the silent acknowledgement passing between us, a wordless exchange that eclipsed any applause or recognition from others. The music, previously a driving force for spectacle, now felt secondary, almost irrelevant. The lights, though bright, seemed to soften, highlighting not just the dress but the shared heartbeat of two generations finally reconnecting. Every person in the room seemed to sense the magnitude of the moment, a shift from superficial admiration to deep respect. It was no longer about trends, about who was fashionable or elegant, it was about legacy, devotion, and the enduring power of love expressed through patient, careful craft. Could the audience truly grasp the depth of this moment, or would they simply admire what appeared to the eye while missing the invisible threads of a lifetime woven into the fabric? As we reached the end of the runway, we paused, both aware that this moment demanded recognition, humility, and reverence. My granddaughter lowered her head in a small, deliberate bow, acknowledging not only the audience but the love and sacrifice embedded in every stitch of the dress. I mirrored her gesture, letting the bow carry the weight of decades, bridging the gap of years, distance, and misunderstandings. The applause rose in waves, swelling into a crescendo, yet it was no ordinary cheer. It carried the resonance of hearts touched, souls moved, and lives subtly changed by what they had witnessed. Cameras flashed with relentless energy, yet the real story, the reunion of two hearts, the recognition of legacy, and the quiet triumph of patience and love, transcended any lens, any image. In that moment, the runway had transformed from a stage of fleeting spectacle into a sacred space, a theater where history, memory, and emotion performed a dance far more powerful than fashion ever could. My granddaughter's hand remained intertwined with mine, a tactile anchor connecting the past, present, and future. Every soft squeeze, every gentle gesture, carried the message. The distance between us was bridged, scorn was replaced by reverence, and misunderstanding gave way to awe. The lights reflected in her eyes, and I could see it, comprehension, admiration, humility, and love all at once. The audience's applause echoed around us, but it felt secondary, a backdrop to the profound moment unfolding at the center of the hall. In that quiet, shared space, I realized that this runway, these lights, and the dress itself were merely vessels. The true spectacle was the reunion of hearts, the restoration of respect, and the recognition that love, patience, and dedication endure beyond trends, time, and youthful arrogance. Could this memory, this night, this moment, be etched into her heart forever, a living testament to the power of love, craft, and family? The echoes of applause, camera flashes, and excited chatter gradually dissolved into the night as we stepped out of the grand hall. Outside, the world was calm, almost serene, bathed in the soft glow of streetlights and the gentle shimmer of moonlight that spilled across the empty pavement. A cool breeze brushed against our faces, carrying with it the faint scent of autumn leaves and distant rain, mingling with the residual perfume and fabric scents clinging to our clothes. Each step we took together on the quiet streets seemed deliberate, measured, as if the world itself had slowed to allow us this unhurried moment of reflection. The city lights flickered like tiny constellations fallen to earth, casting long, shifting shadows that danced around us and mirrored the memories of years past. I felt the weight of the evening, not the adrenaline of performance or spectacle, but the profound, gentle realization that decades of love, patience, and care had finally been recognized. My granddaughter's hand rested in mine, warmer than I had remembered, trembling slightly from the excitement and awe of what had just unfolded. For a long moment, we walked in silence, letting the night absorb the tension, the triumph, and the lingering awe of the runway, as if the world had paused to honor the quiet reconciliation between two hearts. Her eyes met mine occasionally, reflecting gratitude, remorse, and a dawning understanding that went far beyond words. I thought of the long journey from her birthday party, where laughter had cut sharper than a knife, to this quiet walk beneath the stars, where pride, misunderstanding, and scorn had finally been replaced with respect and love. Every street we passed seemed infused with memory, the faint echoes of little hands helping fold fabric, the soft murmur of afternoons spent together, the moments of quiet guidance and patient teaching. Could such fleeting steps carry the weight of a lifetime, bridging the gap between past misunderstandings and present understanding? When we arrived home, the familiar surroundings welcomed us like a soft, comforting embrace. The dress, now fully imbued with the magic of recognition and the power of reconciliation, was laid gently on the table beneath the warm, golden glow of a lamp. I carefully smoothed every fold, each seam carrying decades of effort, devotion, and quiet labor. The fabric seemed to hum beneath my fingers, alive with the memories it held, the laughter of a little girl twirling in ribbons and lace, the quiet afternoons of shared stories, the whispered guidance and gentle patience of a grandmother's hands. Each fold, each stitch, told a story far beyond what the eyes could see, a silent testament to the enduring power of love. My granddaughter lingered nearby, her gaze fixed on the dress with a mixture of awe, humility, and reverence. Her voice trembled as she finally spoke, barely above a whisper, "Grandma, I finally understand. I see everything you've done, all the love, the time, the effort. I see it now." Her words were fragile, but filled with sincerity and emotion that could shatter years of distance and pride. Tears glistened in her eyes, tracing slow, deliberate paths down her cheeks, reflections of realization and remorse. I smiled softly, letting the warmth of recognition and mutual understanding fill the quiet room. Together, we folded the dress with care, placing it gently beside a photograph of my late husband, a reminder that love, devotion, and legacy transcend time, loss, and fleeting moments. The act of folding became ceremonial, an acknowledgement of the past, a celebration of reconciliation, and a promise for the future. The lamp cast long, gentle shadows across the room, illuminating the contours of the dress and the lines of our faces, as if the universe itself were bearing witness to this quiet, intimate triumph. Could this small, tender act capture the depth of decades of love and patience better than any spotlight or applause ever could? We sat together at the edge of the table, hands intertwined, sharing the comfort of silence that only comes when words are no longer necessary. The soft glow of the lamp bathed the room in warmth, illuminating not just our faces but the invisible threads of memory, legacy, and shared history that connected us. I told her stories she had heard before, about her childhood, the hours spent sewing, the little moments that now seemed monumental, and she listened intently, eyes wide, absorbing each word as if trying to memorize a lifetime in a single night. Outside, the world continued its restless rhythm, but within this small room, time seemed to bend, stretching and folding to accommodate decades of memory, love, and healing. The quiet hum of the city beyond the windows became a lullaby, a gentle accompaniment to the soft rhythm of our shared heartbeat. Pride, once so rigid and unyielding, had softened into understanding. Misunderstanding, once a chasm between us, had melted into awe, gratitude, and the quiet acknowledgement of love finally recognized. Finally, I leaned back and allowed a soft, serene smile to settle on my face, feeling an almost sacred peace wash over me. My granddaughter squeezed my hand gently, a gesture heavy with meaning, a silent promise that this connection, this restored love and respect, would endure. We sat there together, enveloped in quiet, reflecting on the journey that had brought us here, from laughter that once cut like knives, to a runway that revealed the true measure of legacy and devotion, to this intimate, sacred room where hearts had truly reunited. The dress lay folded beside us, a tangible embodiment of our journey, its quiet power resonating in every stitch. The night seemed infinite, filled with possibility and promise, the kind that only comes when love is acknowledged, mistakes are forgiven, and hearts are mended. Could a single evening, stitched together with courage, patience, and love, truly change a lifetime of misunderstanding and distance? Tonight, it had, and in that realization, I felt the profound truth of life itself, that love, when nurtured and preserved, is timeless, unyielding, and everlasting. They say the fabric of family can fray, wear thin, and sometimes tear under the weight of years, pride, misunderstanding, or neglect. But I have learned that when that fabric is stitched with love, patience, and care, it does not truly unravel. It bends, it stretches, it weathers storms, yet it endures, holding together in ways both visible and invisible. That night, as I walked along the runway, I did not step forward to show the world my worth or to prove a point. I walked to remind my granddaughter, the one who had once laughed at me, who had once dismissed the years of love sewn into every stitch of my hands, that true beauty is never fleeting. It is not born from flashing lights, applause, or hollow admiration. True beauty is inherited, carried silently through generations, cultivated by hands that have labored, hearts that have endured, and memories that linger far longer than the brightest spotlight. The hall was alive with glittering lights, music, and the collective gaze of hundreds of eyes, yet the real power was quiet, almost invisible. It was in the gentle sway of the dress, the careful balance of each step, and the unspoken bond that had quietly bridged years of pride, misunderstanding, and distance. The applause that erupted when I reached the center of the runway was not truly for the dress I wore, nor for me, the woman who bore it. It was for the love embedded in the fabric, for every night spent sewing in quiet solitude, for every thread that had carried my devotion, my hope, my patience. It was a recognition of endurance, of unseen labor, and of the invisible, timeless legacy that women leave when they refuse to be overlooked or dismissed. As I moved with quiet dignity, feeling the weight and the grace of every stitch, I realized that forgiveness, like elegance, is timeless. It does not ask for acknowledgement, it does not demand applause, and it does not fade with age. It is quiet, unassuming, yet radiant, a force stronger than pride, longer lasting than scorn, and more enduring than memory. And in that realization, I understood something even deeper, that the world often forgets the foundations laid quietly behind the scenes, the invisible efforts that shape lives, families, and hearts. But life has a way of reminding us, often in moments that seem sudden, monumental, or even theatrical, moments when love, patience, and dignity rise above the ordinary and demand recognition, not for vanity or spectacle, but for truth itself. Even as the lights dimmed, and the echoes of applause faded into the hush of an empty hall, I felt a warmth settle in my chest, deeper and more enduring than any fleeting admiration. My granddaughter's hand was still in mine, a tactile affirmation of what had been rebuilt, restored, and remembered. We did not need words, our hearts spoke in a quiet, perfect conversation of understanding, humility, and love. And I knew, in that instant, that the runway, the audience, the lights, and the glittering spectacle were merely vessels, conduits for a greater story, a story of resilience, of devotion, of love and forgiveness that transcends age, scorn, and fleeting trends. I thought of every woman who had been told her time was over, whose voice had been silenced, whose hands had labored without recognition. That night was for her too, for all of us who have quietly endured, who have stitched together lives, families, and memories with patience and care, and who have refused to be erased. Because real beauty is not fleeting, real power is not loud, and real legacy is not worn for applause. It is silent, enduring, and unforgettable. As I took my final bow, letting the soft lights wash over me one last time, I felt the invisible threads of love and memory settle around me like a warm, protective cloak. Every stitch, every fold, every long night spent sewing, every quiet sacrifice, and every tear and laugh shared across decades seemed to converge in that single, luminous moment. I understood, finally, that the applause, the recognition, the astonishment of the audience, these were not the goal. The goal was the restoration of hearts, the acknowledgement of love, the quiet triumph of patience over scorn, and the deep, eternal truth that family, when stitched with care, cannot be undone. Even now, as I remember that night, the images of the glowing dress, the awe in my granddaughter's eyes, and the quiet power of the room remain vivid. And I smile, because I know that forgiveness, like elegance, like love, like true beauty, is eternal. It never fades, it cannot be measured, and it is always, always in fashion.